In 1985, one man would dare to mix gymnastics and karate. Today, we just call that mixed martial arts. Maybe Kurt Thomas couldn't turn gymnastics gold to box office gold, but he does give us the opportunity to watch this cult classic and try to stick the landing as we prove to you that when it comes to Gymkata, it's not that bad. Welcome to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks at A grades in B movies. I'm your host, Jason. Welcome to the show. Now, occasionally, someone brings up a movie, and I am intrigued and challenged by the idea of watching this movie. And today's episode is just that, because my guest host today is none other than Nicholas Santiago, but if you are a fan of going to Comic-Cons, then you might actually know him as Mr. Agitator from the band V is for Villains. How you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to tackle Gymkata with you.
And tackle it we did. Okay, so for anyone who is familiar with my other podcast, Made You a Mixtape, then you are already aware and know who Mr. Agitator is. But for those who didn't listen to that podcast, first of all, shame on you. But can you let us know, what is V for Villains?
V is for Villains is the world's only industrial electronic rock pop supervillain masked band.
That is a lot in one sentence, and it's absolutely awesome. Okay, so now it comes to the point where we have the deep question of, why the hell did you suggest this movie?
You know why, honestly? Gymkata, I'm a connoisseur of bad film. I love terrible film. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think that, Gymkata is one of those rare breeds of film where you could try to make a movie that bad and would never come even close. And by bad, I mean amazing. There is almost no moment in that film that is not utterly hilarious. And I feel like every time I bring this film up to people, nobody knows what it is. I'm always like, well, you haven't seen Gymkata? And they're like, what the hell is a Gymkata? And I'm like, no, you gotta I can't even explain it. It's just the perfect storm for horrible.
Aside from sounding like some bad 1980s era WWF wrestler, and I will admit, I was surprised when I watched the film that it wasn't made by Canon Films. Because they were very into that, ninjas, but not ninjas kind of movie.
Right.
But for those who are now listening to this and going, well, what the hell is a Gymkata? I'm going to hand the microphone over to you, because it's time to take Gymkata and trailerize it.
An American gymnast travels to a foreign country to compete in a deadly game not won by anyone other than the native in more than 900 years. Directed by Robert Klaus. Written by Charles Robert Carter. Stars Kurt Thomas, Techi Agabayani, and Richard Miller.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack out of that whole trailerized thing. So let's give you the rundown of kind of who's in and how this came to be. So it stars world gymnastics champion Kurt Thomas, the late Kurt Thomas, who unfortunately passed away last year.
Kurt Thomas.
Mm-hmm. And former Playboy model Techi Agbayani as Princess Rubali, who actually is still acting today. I went through.
Oh, wow. I
actually went through her her filmography. This year, 2021, she released a film called The Woman Who Cannot Feel, which is kind of how I felt after watching the movie. I can no longer feel the movie. But two movies on her IMDb actually stood out for me. The first one was 1986. She was in The Money Pit with Tom Hanks and Shelley Long, and a movie that I now have to get my hands on, 1988's She-Man, Mistress of the Universe. I have no idea what the hell this movie is.
What?
Yeah, right?
I want this.
Right? The minute you read that, She-Man, Mistress of the Universe, I'm like, I need to actually find this.
This has to happen.
Now, normally when you take an athlete and a former Playboy model and you put them into a pseudo ninja film, that can only mean good things, right?
Typically, I would think.
Yeah, one would think, one would hope. It's a recipe for success. that would literally be like taking, I don't know, Pamela Anderson and Peyton Manning and putting them into a movie.
Right.
While mixing two things together that probably shouldn't be mixed together. Robert Klaus directed this.
Yes.
Now he actually has, first of all, like 2 Oscar nominations to his name.
Really?
He was nominated for 2 short films that he had directed before. But, if the name sounds familiar, it's probably because he was the director of Enter the Dragon.
Really?
Starring Bruce Lee.
I did not know that. I did not know that.
And Yul Brynner's The Ultimate Warrior. And he was also the guy who finished Game of Death, like the movie that came out after Bruce Lee had passed away. He was the one that went in, changed a few things in there and finished it. So Robert Klaus, for martial arts fans, this is kind of right up his alley. Right.
He's like, he's making competitive martial arts like action films, like it's its own genre that's going out of style. And yeah, he made Enter the Dragon. That's amazing. But then he also made Gymkata.
Well, I mean, that's like saying, well, Metallica made the Black Album, but they also made Lulu. So
they also did Saint Anger.
They also replaced the snare drum with a trash can. So there's
did.
that. Sorry, not sorry, Lars. Sorry, not sorry. But
you know what you did.
Exactly. Now, admittedly, when you have a movie like Gymkata, it's going to get some Razzie nominations. And Kurt Thomas was actually nominated as Worst New Star. Didn't win, but he was nominated for Worst New Star. One of the things that surprised me was the entire movie was filmed in Yugoslavia. And while that seems like one of those like odd things, it's not really that odd, because 2 notable films that were filmed, not entirely, but at least partly in Yugoslavia, Kelly's Heroes and the 1990 Captain America made for TV film. The one where Captain America's got like the fake ears on the side of the helmet.
Yep. I'll never forget that film. That was amazing. Somehow worse than the like the Canon one. Right? Didn't Canon do a Captain America?
I'm trying to remember. No, I think that was the Canon one.
Is that the one?
There were 2 that were done like in the 70s, I think, where he was like driving around in a momotorcycle and it didn't look that horrible. No, I think this was the Canon one where it's like,
this is the one where Red Skull like stabbed him in the throat. I just remember being a kid and watching it, and then Captain America gets the shit beat out of him and spends the next hour of the movie walking around homeless crying.
Yeah, with the movie with the derpiest look on his face as he gives the president the thumbs up. Where his special move is literally like, I'm gonna like pretend I'm sick, get out of the car. When someone comes to help me, I'm gonna run and take the car and drive off. Like
old superhero movies, though, man. They were always like that. They're like, well, we can't show any effects, just show them running. I don't know.
Yet
he'll get away.
Somehow is still better than Superman going, "Save Martha." If you haven't,
it really is.
If you haven't had the chance to watch the 1990 Captain America, grab some popcorn and just pack a whole lot of fun, because that is up there with Gymkata as unintentionally funny bad.
It really is. Red Skull in that film has like a jigsaw face, and he like has like he's got a team of Italian supermodel women that fight for him. I don't know why. It's just amazing.
Now, Maxim magazine had this listed as the 17th worst movie of all time. Now, I don't know how much stock that we're going to put into that Maxim list, because at number 16 on that list, so one worse than Gymkata, they had The Thin Red Line. And then at number 7, they had The English Patient. So I have a feeling.
What?
Right?
No. No.
Gymkata is bad, but I don't know. I don't know about how much we put into that list.
Worse. Right.
But keep in mind, it is from Maxim magazine. So we'll take a whole lot of grain of salt in there. Now, according to IMDb, it made only 5.7 million worldwide. And on its opening weekend, it debuted at number 10, right behind Desperately Seeking Susan. So that kind of gives you an idea of the time frame that it came out with. Now, as far as the Rotten Tomatoes score, which is kind of our gauge for what gets on the show, it definitely ranks as worthy of the show because it has only a 17% tomato meter, and a 40% audience score. So before we get to the breakdown, I'm going to ask you, who's right, the critics or the audience?
Well, I don't know, but I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm going to tell you that I love that somewhere in 1990 or whenever the hell this came out, or 80, whatever,
1985.
that there was 1985, year I was born, that there was somebody, there was a suit, there was a dude, an executive that had to go into a meeting with Kurt Thomas and his agent and somebody else from the studio that had to explain, look, man, Desperately Seeking Susan came out. You can't follow that, Kurt. We can't beat Desperately Seeking Susan. I'm so sorry. It's just it's number one. I don't know what to tell you. Like,
and that's like it wasn't even a debut. Like Desperately Seeking Susan was already in the theaters for weeks at that point in time. We're still sitting in ninth, and Gymkata could not do the gymnastics leap over Madonna. That's
pretty bad. That's pretty bad.
Okay,
and I think they're both right. Honestly, I'm going to take the easy answer and say I think they're both right.
I will say that I think it only took a couple of weeks for Gymkata to go low enough that the Gods Must Be Crazy leapfrogged it because it was still in the theaters at that point. Gods Must Be Crazy. You have to understand, dear listeners, that movie was in theaters for like over a year straight. I think it actually holds the world record for longest stretch in a theater, like longest theatrical run. I don't think any movie would ever consecutively be in theaters as long as The Gods Must Be Crazy as, and I don't know if there's a movie that could. I don't think the public would do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to the breakdown here, and I'm going to go to you, Mr. Agitator, Nicholas Santiago.
Yes.
We're going to talk about who stood out to you in this movie as good acting.
Good acting or like good acting? Like
well, to coin the phrase of the show, not that bad acting.
Not that bad. Well, I'm going to say this, and I mean this with the utmost sincerity, and not just because the poor late great Kurt Thomas has passed, but I know as a performer, sometimes you work with what you're given. And, maybe the guy wasn't a good actor, right? In the technical sense, maybe is a strong word. We know he was not a good actor, right? But I feel like when it came to doing his bit, the thing that he was there to do, I feel like he did it in spades. You could clearly see he was talented physically, and that everything that he pulled to the forefront is, and I guess I understand. Like from his point of view, I feel like you would walk through the door and be like, well, I'm not even going to question why there's a pommel horse in the middle of a town square in a medieval, I'm here. I know the truth is they just want to see me on that pommel horse doing Kurt Thomas shit. And that's what he did. So,
I think that's a design of the Parmesan local government, is that they have to have pommel horses put throughout. And you're right. He's not that bad. It's a bad script. Let's be honest. It's a bad script.
Yeah.
Any actor will occasionally get a script, look at the lines and go, oh dear God, you want me to say this with a straight face, right? How much you pay me? Oh, okay. I'll say it.
Right. Exactly.
You could kind of see that, they were trying to go for that. And I mentioned Canon Films at the beginning. They were trying to go for that, maybe not an American Ninja kind of film or kind of feel.
Right.
Because American Ninja, as far as Canon Films went, it did okay. It wasn't a money loser, I don't think, because it wasn't a big budget film to begin with. And
hell, it did well enough. They made 5 of them? They just kept making them. So it did well enough.
Yeah. And that's the thing, in the 80s, and you'll agree with this, there was a lot of those ninja type movies. I mean, Chuck Norris was big as well. So basically anything that was martial arts, or some guy goes to some foreign land and he's gonna he's gonna kick some ass with some sweet jump kicks or spin kicks or whatever, and some
ninjas.
Exactly. That was it. I did find it interesting that they brought in Techi Agbayani, Princess Rubali, to head up his training, yet we never saw her actually train him, just occasionally flick a knife at him. Like,
right. If your goal is to maybe accidentally stab the man, I think that you're doing good. That's good. That's great training. If you want to accidentally murder your pupil. But, I think, we never actually saw her really show him how to do shit.
There is one thing I will point out about her, though, is that, and it felt like two different movies for her. In the first half of the film, she was very quiet, very mysterious, and a lot of her motivation. I think in the first, because I was starting to do a count after about 20 minutes. I think in about the first 50 minutes of the film, she had 4 lines.
Oh yeah, you're right. She didn't really talk much in the beginning at all.
She had way more once the game started, but
there was like a ton of scenes of her just kind of like mysterious eyes.
And that
like
really
by.
played well. Here is our Gymkata, right? Here's our Jonathan Cabot. He's ready to, he's training for this mysterious game where we're not quite sure what the rules are, and I'm not even sure there were rules to begin with. Because no one, any of their word, no one followed them.
I don't recall them ever really divulging what it was, except for get from A to B, kill everybody on the way,
And you have this, person who's been brought in from Parmesan to train him in the ways of the game in order to be able, and the fact she had 4 lines in that first 50 minutes of the film, and it's only an hour and a half film. And there's credits at the end. So, that's a long stretch where she's playing more mysterious. And I think that actually played well. I think that actually added a bit of something to it, rather than just have her spew out some, I think back to Kill Bill Volume 2, like some Pai Mei philosophical crap, don't try and, put out all of like the tropes, the cliches. I was happier that she was mysterious. I was happier that she was, clearly she fell for him pretty fast, because that developed.
Right. That came out of nowhere like a dump truck.
I walked up the stairs in a handstand. Now I'm ready for you.
That's not what you do. That's what I do. That's how I got my girl. I walked up to her while doing a handstand. I was like, hey, babe.
If that was the way to get a wife in this day and age, I would not have the wife that I have. Thankfully, she doesn't ask me to, walk up the stairs in a handstand. This ain't happening until you make it to the top of the floor. No.
Oh shit! Right, it's never happening.
I will say that another person that really kind of stood out for me is Burt Kartalian, and he played the Khan. So basically Princess Rubali's dad, who was, basically like quote unquote the king of Parmesan. It's, it's hard to kind of tell what the hierarchy is, but there was something about him when he was on screen. And I got a very, 2 references came to mind as I was watching him. Mel Brooks.
Right. Yeah, totally.
And Ben Kingsley in Iron Man 3.
Totally.
The not when he was the Mandarin, but when he was the actor.
When he was the bumbling guy.
Trevor Slattery. Yes.
Oh man, I wonder if he's aware of this at all.
I don't know.
That informed his performance even a little bit, because it feels very similar. If Ben Kingsley ever came out and said, my idea for Trevor Slattery came from Burt Kartalian and Gymkata, please say that is the inspiration. I would be able to quit the business. I'd be like, well, you can't get any better than that.
Yeah.
Life will never be sweeter than that moment. So
I'm torn though. I am torn. Like, not necessarily on Kurt Thomas. I'm torn, and I want your opinion on this, on Richard Norton, Zamir, the guy who was supposed to be marrying Princess Ubali and then did his best to try and kill Jonathan Cabot so he couldn't win the game. I'm curious your take on that, because I was kind of like hit or miss.
Yeah, I felt like it was more of a miss. I felt like, to me, what he felt like in his performance was like a stunt guy that was like, I usually do the punching and the kick. I don't know how to do this shit. That's what it came across to me as, like, but now I've got to speak and like have words with other human beings. No, it's not my thing. Like, that was what it felt like. Like, he was just rushing to get through the next set of words just to get to the next moment. You know, like, okay, I said the thing. That's good, right? Like, I said the word. It's over, right? Like, there was just absolute, in my opinion, every time something came out of his mouth, there was just nothing. There's nothing there. You know, Kurt Thomas, I think, was at least trying. And I guess my point on the Kurt Thomas bit was like, okay, like, if you cast Al Pacino in Gymkata, and, you know, I want you to imagine it. If you cast Al Pacino in Gymkata, the film is so poorly made and written, and the concept that it's all the same. Al Pacino is going to be Al Pacino, and it's going to be horrible, and he's not even going to be able to do the gymnastics bit.
I'm like, trying to picture. I mean, Al Pacino as Zamir could be good. You know?
Oh yeah.
I can get killed doing this. You get killed walking your doggy. Now go across the rope.
An amazing moment. And then the ninjas that look like Devo. You know,
I'm not quite sure what they were supposed to be. Like, you had the ninja. It was almost like, it was like Devo met the Purge. I wasn't quite sure exactly what that was.
Big red hats. They jump out of nowhere. They're like, no, get back on the course. Get back on course. Like, who the hell are these guys?
Right?
You know, that's your job. Your job is to stand out in the field all day. And if somebody starts going left, you tell them to go right. Okay.
I will say that this movie had a lot of moments where, like, you're watching it and so there's our gymnast, you know, there's our Gymkata guy, there's Princess Agbayani, there's Zamir, and then I lost track of how many times, you know, someone would come up and go, well, who the hell is this guy and where does he come from? Like, all these contestants in the game, it's like, where, especially the big guy, like this massive, and I have to bring him up here. I have to bring him up. Bob Schott as Thorg. And if you've ever wondered what it would look like if you took a 1980s Californian surfer dude and shoved an air hose up his ass and hit full, kind of what Bob Schott looked like.
That is exactly what he looks like, too.
I mean, for reference, he was actually a professional arm wrestler, and he had the body to look like it. So it's one of those things where it's like, he's almost perfect. Yeah. Almost perfect for that 80s kind of, I'm just here to be, like, you know, the hump in the road.
Right. Yeah, no, I could see that. I mean, I just felt like, as a whole, every time I watch Gymkata, I am always surprised at the randomness of the moments where you're like, somebody had to write this, and then somebody else had to storyboard it, presumably. And then, you know, because, you know, it's when you think about making a film, it's like there's a team of about 100 people standing there behind the camera. It's not just actor A and B. Clearly, there's an operator. Everybody's there. Not one person thought, well, maybe that'd be pretty random if an arrow just flew out of the middle of nowhere. It killed the guy because the story just deemed he was not necessary to the plot anymore. So what are we going to do with him? Just shoot him. You know, like,
well, it's like at the beginning of the film, right? Like, you know, Jonathan Cabot does the gymnastics competition, and then he gets taken away by the SIA, which is, you know, really not the CIA, but it is, you know, and there's some random blonde girl that's like looking at him like, please come back. Who the hell is this?
Who is this?
it's like, was that his girlfriend? Was that his wife? And now he's, you know, he's you know, taken off to some safe house to learn the ways of the game from some mysterious woman that he's, you know, that's holding a knife at him, and he's going to jump as soon as he can walk up the stairs in a handstand. Like, who the hell is this girl? There are so many questions, and you're right.
My other question is kind of like, does this happen to him often? Are we led to believe that Kurt Thomas is a SIA agent on the regular? Like, I know they kind of went through this whole, like, well, you're going to be trained. We're going to do this. But how often does the U.S. government recruit Olympic athletes to go and do mission? What? Why?
I wonder. And, we talked about, how it would be amazing if Ben Kingsley kind of came out and said that Burke Cartalian was his muse for this. But I do wonder, though, because there's this TV show, and I haven't had a chance to watch it, but there's a show or a movie or something called JCVD. And it's basically the entire premise is like, is Jean-Claude Van Damme, isn't really this thing, but he's like some kind of secret agent or something like that. And the movie roles is just kind of a, like I said, I haven't had a chance to watch it, so I'd be curious if, really athletes that we admire today are really secret agents. It's kind of like a Confessions of a Dangerous Mind thing,
right.
Game show hosts can be contract killers. Then gold medal winning gymnasts can be, secret agents for some clandestine alphabet agency of the government. I
starting to feel so much like Death to Smoochie in a weird way.
Oh, there's another good movie. There's absolutely another good movie.
People hated it. I adored it. I thought it was one of the best films.
Oh,
it was so funny.
Fun.
So funny.
Much fun.
Well, but like, I feel like here's my take on the absurdity of that idea of like, well, we're going to activate Olympic gold medalist Kurt Thomas to go do our secret agent thing.
Operation Pommel Horse.
Right, exactly. Operation Pommel Horse. Like, what the hell else are you going to use him for? In any other scenario, he's just a guy. Yep. Like, James Bond drinks and smokes and has sex every 5 seconds and is probably kind of out of shape.
Mm-hmm.
And he will beat Kurt Thomas every single time because he has a gun. And Kurt Thomas has gymnastics. And that's not going to help you a lot with a bullet barreling at you.
Yeah, James Bond gets all the cool gadgets. And, our Jonathan Cabot, Kurt Thomas, got, and he was told not to touch it, a knife that jumped out of the handle. It's like, you could kill someone from 20 feet. I'm like, that's great.
Right.
Not going to help you on a pommel horse.
No. Right. They didn't give him one gymnastic themed secret device or anything.
Like give the guy some kind of pole that will extend out or that has stands so you can flip and do your kicks or whatever. But
not one thing there wasn't one thing in his capability as a gymnast that made me feel like he could win the game.
No.
Whatever the game was. Like, I felt like you would be better off just getting like a Hapkido instructor.
Yeah.
Or like, because I get it. He can gymnast very well.
Mm-hmm.
Damn it, Kurt. No one does gym like you. But like, I don't think that translates to a guy that just punches you to death really quick.
Jumping like John Carter is not going to help you on this mission. It's not going to help you.
Not going to do anything. And I get it. Like, you got to like run the tightrope and shit. But outside of that, I don't think it's very useful.
And now, admittedly, you mentioned that I don't know why there's pommel horses in Parmesan. Maybe that's why they activated Operation Pommel Horse. I'm not quite sure.
Maybe it is. Maybe somebody did like recon.
Mm-hmm.
On the Parmesan, which just sounds like an amazing pasta dish. And they were like, yeah, it does. I'll have a Parmesan, please. I felt like they did some kind of reconnaissance and they came back and they all had a meeting and they were like, there's an ungodly amount of pommel horses in this medieval town.
Yeah.
We need somebody who understands how to navigate pommel horses. Well, sir, we feel like if we send in Agent Jason Bourne, he'll be able to just walk by the pommel horses. No. You're not understanding. We need somebody who can make contact with the pommel horses if needs be. And I think Jason Bourne, he wouldn't know.
No. Now, admittedly, I kind of wish, how like everything is a cinematic universe.
Right.
If Gymkata was going to be the Iron Man, I was, basically waiting for the next film to be like, the triple jump specialist. Going off to some country and doing something. I needed my gymnastics Avengers. I need
gymnastics
that to
efficient.
We need
It's
that
like
to
a
happen.
12-year-old girl does the Hulk. She's really good at doing the splits.
we don't know why she was kicked out of the Olympics.
She's always angry.
Oh, jeez. But I will say this about the plot of the film. Okay, there were things in here where it was actually somewhat intriguing.
Yeah.
The entire concept, though, of the game, like, it wasn't really handled that well in this film. Let's call a spade on this one. Like, the execution of the game is literally, I'm going to run through corn, and then I'm going to go across a rope, then climb up a rope, and then, that should be it, right?
Right.
But the concept,
there was no objective, really.
I can see the concept of the game being used as a plot device for a film where it becomes like this underground, high stakes, illegal competition on some remote island that claims immunity from all laws of all countries because of international, pirate laws or whatever the case may be.
Right. Like, you're entering at your own risk, man.
Yeah.
And I feel like in order to make that work, I mean, basically that's kind of Mortal Kombat, right? Like,
I was just
in
thinking
a weird
that,
way. Yeah. But I feel like, that's an intriguing idea. And I'm a big believer that you can take any horrible film, character, anything. And if you rewrite it and you try to make it good, you can make it good. You can take Gymkata and make it an amazing film. It may not be called Gymkata by the end of it, but you can take the premise, the concept, the characters, the idea, and you can really retranslate that. Because surprise, surprise, we run into, Kurt Thomas's father on the island.
Commander Cabot.
At random. Right. I guess he's there. Yeah. All right. Weird. And I know they kind of explained, your dad was in the game at some point. It was very loose. But the whole lead up to him being there was just like, oh, hey, surprise, Dad's here.
Yeah.
Oh,
who the hell is this guy? Cool. Oh, Dad.
Right. Well, yeah, it's Dad. And then Dad's dead. All right, well, bye, Dad.
It would have been interesting had they, had Kurt Thomas's Jonathan Cabot, showed this kind of like, I miss my dad kind of thing, he just kind of disappeared, and
any backstory.
Exactly. It was revealed that his dad had entered the game kind of thing, was part of the SIA, and he, in order to find his dad, he would have to go and do this for the SIA. Like, there's motivation that could have been put in there. Like, there is actually, I think at the heart of this film, there's actually a decent plot and script that could be there. And there is a line I'm going to point out too, because there's more to this. This is literally, there's an onion to Gymkata as I was watching this.
Well, I feel like bad film, there should be. And it's like maybe even like just a twist or a rewriting of an idea here or there. Why can't you rewrite at the end that really, Kurt Thomas, his father, is like an heir to Parmesan? And it's like, that's why they sent him in, because he's connected to the royal family in some way, shape, or form. Like sometimes it's just like a little tiny seasoning will give it something.
Or if the dad had gone native and kind of taken over Parmesan, they basically needed the son to go in, win the game, and kind of dethrone him. Like, there's so much that can be done there. But Parmesan itself, like, it was a very fascinating concept, right? Because the entire, country of Parmesan really felt like it was, set in the middle of a medieval times. Everything was kind of felt like it was, I don't know what era they were going with, like Mongolian or whatever the case, but there was a line in it from Princess Rubali. And she said, young people want Parmesan to enter the 20th century. And I'm like, there's a lot of backstory in that one sentence when they actually gave her a sentence, that I'm like, I want more out of this. Like, is him going to win, win the game, and then help stop Zamir from basically taking over the army and having a coup, which kind of felt like that was the end. Zamir's end goal was to form a coup by marrying Princess Rubale, right? And controlling the army.
He clearly didn't really give a shit about her at all. It was just more about getting the seat.
I clearly thinking way too much about a 1980s Gymkata film, but there is a lot of backstory there, and I kind of wish that either the movie was a little bit longer or you trimmed down some of the gym fighting scenes, kind of thing, just to kind of get to it. But there was actually clearly, when they were writing the screenplay based off of the book, there's a lot of backstory there that does add a lot of flavor to the film if you look for it.
Right. No, I agree with that. And I think, there are things even in the worst of films, there are things that kind of intrigue or capture the imagination. And I agree with you. I think that that's one of those things where it's like, clearly the idea of dropping an operative into an area where he's trapped, that could have been the kind of thing where it was an interesting and intriguing 24 hours, as opposed to it being like, all of this weird subplot with how are we getting there? Okay, now we're here. Now and then the training. And then would have been more interesting is like dropping this guy in the middle of the action right at the beginning and saying, well, you got a day to get out, but you're in an area now where there's no technology. People don't play by modern rules. It's, you're in a medieval zone. Yeah. It's been very interesting, and I agree.
There is one part of the game, that I'd have to bring up, and it's after he got through like all the climbing and the gymnastics type kind of thing, and I guess he's back in the town at this point in Parmistan, and it takes some weird horror movie vibe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like everyone's going crazy. Dude tries to slash at him with a knife and then cuts his own hand off. And
there's a guy who has another face on the back of his face,
which was creepy as hell. There was the crow woman, who's literally like staring at him from the window, going, ah! I'm like, what is going on here? But then about 10 minutes into this weird fever dream, it hit me. It really hit me. And it came from like the idea kind of born from the fact that Kurt Thomas in this film kind of looks like a young Mark Hamill. At least maybe that was kind of what they were.
Oh, sure.
So if you're watching this scene and you're not on drugs, so that what you're watching is real.
Speak for yourself. Yeah.
I'm not saying, but if you watch that scene and you equate it to Luke Skywalker in The Empire Strikes Back on Dagobah, and he goes into the tree and he has that moment where he faces Vader. They have the little lightsaber duel. He chops off the head and like the mask explodes into his face. So it's very much like that. I was almost waiting for, like, as you mentioned, like the guy with the two faces. And I think the second face, they did their best to make it look like someone who looked like Kurt Thomas. So I was like, oh my God, they're doing The Empire Strikes Back. They're doing the Luke and Dagobah moment.
Yeah, I can see that 100%. Like, I can see that that's their approximation, sitting there going like, well, Star Wars is hot right now. We got to do something that's like Star Wars, but we got a gym movie in the medieval times. It's fine.
True.
Put everything in this. And Devo's great too. Those Devo ninjas.
Yeah, but the fact that they, the entire reason for him going there and winning the game, so they could get their one wish was that so the American government could put a Star Wars station in there because, of course, Star Wars was a thing in 1985. We're talking Reagan era. They want to have satellites up, and he called it Star Wars because Reagan would.
Yeah, they did.
But. When you realize that, oh my God, so they're using Star Wars as a plot, like the actual concept, not the movie. And then they have this very Star Wars moment, which I can't believe I just compared Empire Strikes Back to Gymkata, but here we are.
You did. You made it happen.
I will point out, this movie showed a level of restraint that you don't see in movies, a lot of movies these days.
Yeah. Do tell. I'm very interested.
Not once did anyone say the word Gymkata. Not once.
They didn't?
It's never said.
Oh my God.
Not
I think
one.
you're right.
Not one roll credits moment.
Oh my God.
Like, so when you think, right, like, I know there's the whole joke of like people go, Gymkata. No, they never said it.
Never said it. There wasn't one scene where Kurt Thomas looked at the camera and said, and that's when I became Gymkata. Or something horrible like that. That's when I started practicing Gymkata. You know?
We never had that moment. Like,
I have Flying Eagle. I have Gymkata.
Right?
You know,
you would expect that.
You would. I absolutely would. And for some reason in my mind, I thought that there was some moment where somebody was like, well, he practices Gymkata or something. I guess they never did. It's just a horrible made up martial art that they created, I guess.
Like, I don't know if I'm disappointed that they missed the boat on it, or if they called it Gymkata because they didn't have a name for it and that the name kind of was born in post-production, or if it was always called Gymkata. You know, maybe it was originally called The Terrible Game. Who knows, right?
Maybe it was. I feel like it had to have been.
Possibly. Yeah. Because, of course, it is based on the Terrible Game book.
Right.
So I wonder if they called it that, and then maybe there was something where like, well, we want to distance ourselves from it, and then we'll just call it what? Gymnastics and karate. So Gymkata.
Right. We can afford to get Kurt Thomas, and he wants to break into acting, and that's the actor that we've got for the Terrible Game. So we need to retool it.
Yeah, you have to put quotation marks around the. We could afford Kurt Thomas.
Right, we can afford Kurt Thomas. We gotta retrofit this to fit. It's like those horrible Hellraiser sequels that Dimension made, where they were clearly just spec scripts of other films. Like, oh, this is a detective movie. Put Pinhead in it. Called it Hellraiser. Yeah, you know, they were like, oh, we've got Kurt Thomas. Just call it Gymkata. Gymkata. Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, put it on paper.
It's kind of like American Psycho 2 has absolutely nothing to do with American Psycho. On its own, it's not a bad film. The minute you call it American Psycho,
it's horrible.
Yeah, like just let it be a movie unto its own. You don't need to tie it in.
I don't know why they do that, but they do that. I mean, I do know why they do that. They do that because they feel like it's going to increase the leverage of sales just with a pre-built fan base. But the truth is I agree. The moment you call it American Psycho 2, you have thrown in disappointment for the fan base that's going to buy. Mm-hmm. And then you've thrown in everybody else kind of going like, that's not as good as the original, you know? Yeah. Like when really it's just not a sequel. It's just not, you know? No. I can take any film and tack on like a 5-minute intro that says, and you know, then I escaped X, Y, and Z from the original movie. That doesn't make it like what it, you know, doesn't make it have anything to do with the original. And that's, I've seen studios, they do that stuff all the time. It's just not good. It never turns out well.
It's kind of like, and I don't know if you remember this, the Friday the 13th TV series.
Oh, absolutely. Not only do I remember it, but I've watched it many times.
Yeah. And
as an adult.
Like, where's Jason?
There's no who?
Right? Now, I mean, if they had made an American Psycho 3 and it as well was a separate story, then you could sit there and say, oh, I get it. American Psycho is an anthology, kind of like National Lampoon's.
It's about different psychotics of the American subculture, right?
Exactly. Kind of like American Horror Story. We get that American Horror Story, each season is its own self-contained entity, and that makes sense. But each feature, each film is like an American Psycho 3 would be like, you know, it could be anybody. Yeah.
Right. Like it could be a banker that loses his mind, or like somebody who's into politics in the worst way and loses their mind, or, you know, exactly. Like, but then you have to I feel like capture the feel of the first film, at least. I feel like you have to at least, it doesn't have to be shot for shot identical, but it has to at least feel like it can live in that world, you know, where when you're watching, American Horror Story, I feel like you know that it's American Horror Story.
Yeah. You know? But of course, like American Psycho was coming off of the book that it was based off of. I remember correctly, by Bret Easton Ellis. And, you know, so there's already that source material, and this had nothing to do with that source material. Had there never been an American Psycho book, had there just been a movie called American Psycho, like an original screenplay, then you could do American Psycho 2, have it be separate, and then you could do American Psycho 3, have it be separate, and people get, oh, it's an anthology.
Right. I think that would make a lot of sense. And I feel like, even it's pre-built sometimes that people go to sequels with that first thing in a new environment, a new idea, a new setting.
Mm-hmm.
Where I feel like studios kind of have this sense in their mind that's like, well, we got to do the same thing again.
Mm-hmm.
Or they just go completely left and say like, well, we're just going to tack this on in name only. Right. And I feel like there's never like an in between, like you're saying, like there should be kind of more respect paid to the idea of something and not just like, well, let's just do it again.
Yeah.
Or let's just take a spec script.
Pretty much. But the fact that, Gymkata was never actually uttered in this movie.
Never uttered once.
Right.
And I want to get a copy of The Terrible Game now. Like, I want to read this book. I want to see if because like, what is it? Based on the novel by, Dan Tyler Moore. That guy had to be like, they're making The Terrible Game. It's happening.
Right.
And I know he had to have sat there and watched Gymkata and been like, what?
What is this?
What?
That's very much that's very much a Clive Cussler moment, I think. Clive Cussler is this, and I've mentioned him on the show before. Very much like the Dirk Pitt Adventure series, like that's his bread and butter. And they made two movies based on his books, Race the Titanic and Sahara. I don't know if you remember Sahara.
I remember Sahara.
And each time a movie was made from his books, he hated it to the point of he was very much like against the film. He wouldn't do any press for it. He basically like disavowed and like it was bad. It was bad. Like, so when the author of the book that made your source material says your movie sucks.
Oh yeah.
You're not going to do well.
Press for your film. Well, and you know what the truth is though, those movies sucked. They were bad.
I mean,
Sahara was an awful movie.
Here's the thing, like I'm a Clive Cussler fan. I love reading his books and I've read the Sahara book. Do I have casting issues with that book or with that movie? Yes, I do.
Sure.
Matthew McConaughey, not necessarily my first choice for Dirk Pitt. But even that in hindsight was not so bad. William H. Macy I thought was actually great as Sandeck. That's fine. Steve Zahn. Steve freaking Zahn. I have nothing wrong with Steve Zahn as Steve Zahn.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Here's the thing with the character he played, Al Giordino.
Yes.
Al Giordino is in the books, a short, stocky, wisecracking Italian.
No, that's
Steve
clearly
Zahn
wrong
is
already.
not a short, stocky, wisecracking Italian.
No, not even close.
I have said this before. Keep it in mind when Sahara came out, right?
Yeah.
Around the time when kind of News Radio went off the air. Remember that TV show?
Yep.
News Radio era Joe Rogan is Al Giordino. Not podcasting UFC Joe Rogan. I'm talking News Radio era Joe Rogan is Al Giordino. He would have been perfect for that role at that time. But I digress.
I can see it. I can see it.
I will say something about the directing though. Aside from the fact that all of this is, the fact that we don't have Gymkata uttered in the script.
Right.
Before they get to Parmesan, so they leave America and then they get to Karabal, which is this, I guess neighboring nation to Parmesan in their world. And the princess gets kidnapped and all that. And he goes in and Gymkata's his way to rescue her. Where they're shooting in that town, there was something about that setting that just added almost an Italian Job type feel to the chase scene where they're trying to get away from the kidnappers of the princess. And I'm like, this looks great. This feels claustrophobic. There's a high tension to this. Whoever picked up that location earned their money. That's where they shot that and how they shot that chase scene was perfect. Like, again, massive kudos to Robert Klaus. You had a really good director at the helm of a really bad script, and he actually made some of these scenes really good, and that was one of them.
Right.
Once they get to Parmesan, it's all downhill from there.
It's all over. Right.
But Karabal, Karabal was great.
I agree. No, and I felt like those parts of the film moved. It did. It moved much faster. And I felt like the first 30 minutes moved way faster than the middle bridge part. It was like the next 30 minutes I felt like was just a drag. It just kept going. And like, the only thing that I felt like was interesting about that was that we did get a little bit of Parmesan lore, right? But I think once again, it's almost like you can feel the elements that were from the novel, maybe, that we're kind of like, oh, well, that's the story, really. Now, and then the rest of it was like, well, let's just see some Kurt Thomas gym shit.
Right.
Well, let's just see that happen.
And I think in retrospect, Karabal, being very modern as far as 1985 Yugoslavia goes, makes Parmesan even more interesting because Parmesan is, it feels like a giant medieval times, complete with the feast table and like your Devo ninjas playing net games with each other on horses. Also, they are. Tell me Devo Ninjas is not a phenomenal band name.
I'm in. Let's do it.
All right.
Devo Ninjas.
But yeah, there's again the directing and the cinematography too. Again, like that chasing in Karabal was great. Parmesan, there's a lot of actually. I will point out one part of Parmesan when the game starts. Right before after their run through and the feasting and all that. There's the part where Kurt Thomas is in the cornfields. And Zamir and his troops are trying to chase him down. It's surprisingly well shot. Like that cornfield scene actually works really well, I think.
Yeah. Once again, I don't think that there was lack of competency.
Yeah, no.
I think that's one of the biggest things of this film that makes it more watchable, right? Is you do get the sense that there was competent filmmaking happening, which to me ultimately makes it funnier. It was just something about, so when something's like, in my opinion, so low budget, so low grade, that you can tell that nobody involved had any clue what the hell was going on, except for like The Room, I still find hilarious, naturally. But like when you see like a group of people really trying and struggling and they just don't really know the craft, to me, that's less funny than when a studio just happens to just misfire so drastically that you're like, this is actually a real film that clearly had budget. Somebody along the line just didn't know what was going on.
I do have to point out, though, there was one scene where it wasn't unintentional comedy, but it was actually one of those lighthearted moments where, before the game starts and Kurt Thomas is being tended to by discount Olga, like the Parmestanian woman with no teeth and no tongue and whatnot.
Discount Olga.
Like literally the comedy in that scene. Like it's not overstated because I think that would have felt way out of feel for the film, but Kurt Thomas actually could have had some decent comedic chops, and I think I think the director saw that and kind of let him be him a little bit because I'm sure Kurt Thomas was not like very hyper focused Gymkata who can't run through a cornfield. Like he was the slowest damn runner in the game. How do you expect him to win?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, he was literally plotting from scene to scene, and you were kind of going like, if there's no pommel horse, this guy's dead.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which always made it hilarious. It was those random moments where he was like, I can swing on this and do a gymnastic move in the middle of a town, or like I can jump on that pole and flip around and karate kick people. I can do that.
I'm just going to give a word of advice to the people in Gymkata 2 from the SIA. Rather than activate Operation Pommel Horse, can we activate Operation Decathlete? Because that might have been better.
Probably would have been more useful to get a guy that could run.
Now, I want to put this into your wheelhouse here because one of the things I always like to kind of bring up is the score and the soundtrack. Being who you are, I want to put this in your court here. Like, how was the music for the film to you?
It's actually great. It's like it's hilarious unintentionally, but that theme gets stuck in my head. Dun 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 dun. It is every kid playing action figures with his father. It's like the guy who wrote this score knew that like he sat down, watched the reel or read the call sheet, was like, okay. Yep. What is this score? Dun 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 dun. Bum, bum.
When that was on,
Where's my check?
The first thing that came to mind was Captain Kirk fighting anybody on like the rock cliff. That's the feel of the score at that time. It's literally like I expected the Captain Kirk butt kick where he would turn around and like bounce backwards into whatever villain or monster he was fighting with his butt. And that was Captain Kirk's fight move. The Captain Kirk butt kick.
I agree 100%. It was literally ba 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 da da da.
Right.
So that was absolutely the pace of the score. And you did. I felt the guy. I legitimately felt the composer across space and time going, okay.
We're gonna Captain Kirk Gymkata here.
Yeah. Well, I saw Star Trek. I got this.
I will point out though. There was the training montage because every martial arts, person going into some kind of competition has to have the training montage.
Oh, it has to happen. Yeah.
But for the first half of the montage, there was no music. It was all natural sound. And I guess it was like the SIA agent kind of talking in, kind of hindsight voiceover, kind of flashback voiceover kind of thing, talking about the game, but not on camera. And I'm like, are they going to do a musicless montage? Because I'm kind of here for it. That would have been like so out of the box different that I think, they eventually put the cheesy music in, right? Yeah, as he got about 3 stairs up the thing in the handstand walk, but right. But that first half of that montage, I actually have to like almost credit them for not putting the music in. It would have been very different.
It would have been different, right? It would have been something. I think, I don't know if there was that much thought. I think you just gave it way more thought in 3 seconds than anybody editing the film probably did. They were like, oh, where's the cue? When does it come in? I don't know, just drop it in there.
I will remind you that we've also been talking for more than an hour about Gymkata, so we clearly both of us have put way too much thought into this. Oh yeah,
movie. We're both punch drunk, just like we're both just swiveling around with Gymkata right now.
Pretty much, but yet not saying Gymkata. We have said Gymkata more in this podcast than they said in the movie. Way more.
I think we've said Gymkata more than anyone.
Possibly.
Period.
Quite possibly.
Every time I bring up Gymkata, it's just I get blank stares, and I'm like, no, trust me, you need some of this in your life.
Have you seen Gymkata? What? Gymkata? Gesundheit. That's pretty much.
Right there, like that's not a word. Trust me. You need this.
Now, as a lover of admittedly bad films, especially in the 80s, yes. Fight sound design, fight Foley sound effects. I mean, again, kudos on restraint because they didn't use the Wilhelm scream, which I'm actually kind of surprised. Yeah. There were many Wilhelm moments in this one that could have happened, but they didn't.
True.
But oh my God, every punch, every kick sounded like someone taking a baseball bat to a series of cardboard boxes. Like, and it almost made it more fun.
Oh, it's amazing. It is. It's truly the lowest common denominator of sound design. Mm-hmm. It really was. It was like, the thuddiest, thickest slap. Like they were like, we want you to understand and we want to translate the information that through Gymkata, Kirk Thomas can punch you out of existence. What makes it amazing too is that none of it tracks. Like not one swing that guy takes makes you feel like he could really put down much of anything. So you're just kind of like, oh, okay.
That is the widest swing. I'm surprised you made contact, but we're gonna make it sound like literally you Hulk smashed a semi off the road.
It is. It's one of those surreal moments where your eyes and your brain, it's just not lining up with what you're seeing is what you're hearing. You're like, okay.
Like for any of the listeners right now who I mentioned Foley sound. If you don't know what Foley sound is when they film, when they film a scene and then they bring it into post-production and they strip all the sound out of it and then they recreate the sounds because it can be noisy on set. There's wind if you're outside, there's generators, there's the whole works, and they redo all the sound. So they literally, you have maybe 2-3 people in a room. So if you see someone walking on screen, they're in a studio with a microphone pointed at their feet. They're wearing the same shoes. They're on the same surface and they're walking in step and redoing that sound. So somewhere along the way, someone in a Foley studio said, Kurt Thomas is so strong and such a good fighter. Get me the sheet metal and a sledgehammer. We're going to go with this one.
Right. Somebody was just pounding away. It was like, that's the Kurt Thomas punch.
Like, picture Gallagher and a watermelon, and that's what they did to whatever they could get their hands on, just so to make Kurt Thomas feel like the strongest individual ever, even though he couldn't run.
Yeah, no, he wasn't. I don't think he'd win the game.
No, I'm surprised he did. If it wasn't for Throg, he would not have won. Oh, and the Dagobah part of Parmesan.
right. Man, they just happened to drop Operation Pummel Horse, man. That's it.
Which now makes me wonder if that was like some kind of weird fever dream Dagobah scene, or if he just got back to the city in the wrong part of town.
I don't know.
Is that Gangland LA version of Parmesan? Oh,
right,
you need to make it to the hills.
Oh, no, you're just in the bad part of Parmesan. Like, trust me, it's really nice over here. It's not over there, though. Like, that's the whole point, though, right? Like, I feel like so much was left unsaid that the whole thing is like watching a weird fever dream unfold in front of you, where little by little, as it descends more and more into madness, both figuratively and literally, because clearly, like, was that like an insane asylum that he was dropped into? Is that where they just put people in Parmesan that they don't know what to do with, that have issues? Like, what is this?
I will say, like, as I was watching this, like, and making my notes and all that, I'm like, I have so many more questions. I do.
Right. That's it. You get to the end, you're like, not only did you tell me nothing, but by the end of telling me nothing, I actually feel like I know less.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I want to know more. I want to know the world of Gymkata. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I do have to point out, going back to music for 2 seconds here.
Yes.
Every now and then, like, I don't know about you, when I watch the movie and I get to the credits and all that, I always kind of like to go to like the music part of the credits to see what songs are in there, who wrote what, if there were any bands I recognize.
Absolutely.
There is one song listed in this movie, and it's called Get Even. And it was written by 2 people.
Okay.
Alan Nathanson and Roger Stone.
Huh.
And of course I was like, wait, no, not the Roger Stone.
No.
Now, I looked, it wasn't, thankfully.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah. I'm like, tell me Roger
You're
Stone.
too good for this Roger Stone.
Right?
Don't do Gymkata.
Actually, I think Gymkata is too good for Roger Stone, but But no, it was not the Roger Stone. So, we don't have to cancel Gymkata. We're fine. Gymkata can stay.
Yeah, okay. Good.
So
That's pretty low blow when you say Gymkata is not. Ooh, you're just not good enough for Roger Stone.
Gymkata is too good for you.
Gymkata is too good for you, Roger Stone.
Oh God.
True, though.
I think that needs to be a t-shirt right now. Gymkata is too good for you. Okay, before we get to our MVP of Gymkata, because we have talked about the wealth of backstory available to this and how the plot of the game could actually translate. So as a lover of this film, how excited would you be if they did a remake of Gymkata, even if they didn't call it Gymkata, even if they basically took the premise of and went and got a decathlete instead of if Simone Biles is in Gymkata 2, how are you excited to watch it, or are you upset the fact that it will maybe tarnish the good badness of Gymkata?
See, that's hard, because to me, what makes Gymkata the thing that I gravitate towards is the unintentional awfulness of it. Because I think if you redo Gymkata and you make Gymkata better, I think at its best, it just becomes another generic action film.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. It just becomes something I'm going to sleep through and not really give a shit about, like Transformers. I don't really care. I'm going to sleep through Transformers. I know there are a lot of people that love Transformers. No disrespect to you. Mm-hmm. But like, to me, it was just a generic, like, oh, by the end of it, I didn't really care. It wasn't bad enough to be funny, but it wasn't good enough to be enjoyable to me.
See, I know you're not talking about the 1986 Transformers cartoon.
No. That's
gold.
That's a masterpiece, damn it.
That's gold. Yeah.
I love the 80s, and amazing soundtrack too.
Oh God, yes. Oh, Instruments of Destruction and the death music of Optimus Prime.
Oh my God. Dun,
like,
dun, 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 dun.
Dun.
Yeah, like the march. Yeah, absolutely. And then you have the amazing song, You Got the Touch. Dun, dun. Come on, man.
Okay.
It's brilliant.
The minute Mark Wahlberg started singing that in Boogie Nights, I was just like,
oh, killed me. My life. I was like, I think 11 or 12 when I saw Boogie Nights. Changed my life. Love that movie. Love that movie still. But yeah, when he started singing it, amazing.
I think that's why I like Bumblebee so much. It was that the beginning of Bumblebee, when they had like the actual 80s looking Transformers at the beginning of that movie.
See, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. I didn't see Bumblebee.
Bumblebee's worth it.
Bumblebee's
worth it.
Check it out.
It's not Michael Bayified. It's actually worth it. I will give it to that. And Haley Steinfeld was actually great in it. I will.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'll
have to check it out.
Full credit for Bumblebee on that one. It's not Bumblebee. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, that was always my big complaint when I saw the original Transformers years and years ago. I was like, God, they don't even look like the Transformers. And to me, I was like, so much is happening. It's like, in their action scenes, it just looks like a bunch of metal pieces just flying around. I don't know what the hell is going on here. And then it always really, really creeped me out and concerned me that Shia LaBeouf was practically dry humping his girlfriend on top of Bumblebee. Yep. I was like, that's a sentient being, dude. That's like me sitting on your lap and rubbing my girlfriend. Like, what the hell is happening? I would be like, get off me.
It's a good thing Bumblebee couldn't talk at the time, because it'd be like, oh, this is getting real. Oh,
it's like when your pets hump like in front of you, or like your dog humps your leg, you're like, just let it happen. And God, I hope it happens fast.
That Rocket Raccoon moment of, wipers, get him off.
Right. That's exactly what it was. Like, that was uncomfortable.
Okay.
There was so much about the original Transformers that didn't track with me. So I was like, oh God.
Yeah. Okay. So we come to the point. So who is your MVP of Gymkata?
The editor.
Really?
Whoever that guy is that edited that film made something hilarious. There are so many unintentionally hilarious edits. Things that just make me laugh every time I see it.
I will give the editor, and again, the Robert Krause, the director there, like, again, sorry, Klaus, the full credit where credit is due. Like, they did a good job.
Sure.
And, so my MVP, though, while Robert Klaus was on the list for my MVP, I have two MVPs. One, everyone who didn't say Gymkata. Because again, that shows remarkable restraint, and I'm now curious of the story is why no one actually said Gymkata in the actual Gymkata movie. And I thought about Bert Kartalian, because again, he brought that moment of like, it was all good. But now, you know what? I got to go with Robert Klaus. I think this movie isn't as enjoyable as it is if he didn't clearly handle the movie with care. He has the martial arts movie background. He brought a steady hand. If ever a director could be considered to have a steady hand with a whole lot of crap handed to them, I think Robert Klaus did better than what anyone could expect, given the hand he was dealt with.
Right. Because the circumstances are the circumstances. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Like, no one overplayed their role. No one overacted. Nothing was overshot. Nothing was blown out of proportion. There were no massive explosions. There were no ninja raids or whatever. I mean, yes, Devo Ninjas for the win, but
Devo Ninjas.
But everything was handled caringly and lovingly as a director is supposed to. And it actually makes Gymkata, is it a great movie? No. Is it a bad movie?
Right. No.
No. Is it a great bad movie? Yes, it is.
I agree.
That's pretty much it. Nick,
I love it.
Thank you so much for this. Where can we find you out there? Where can we find VS for Villains? And what have you got lined up?
Ooh, man, you can find VS for Villains at vsforvillains.com, at facebook.com/VS for Villains. I am Mr. Agitator. We've got a lot coming up, actually. We are currently talking to the amazing Gigi Edgley. We're probably going to pick up some more shows together and do some more performances together. She just played with us at Dragon Con. It was a real blast. I know we're going to be at Metacon in October. And we've got other stuff we're going to be announcing very shortly. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for this. Thank you for making me watch this epic film of great badness.
I will make you watch it. I will make everybody watch Gymkata.
Right? I am good enough for Gymkata, and Gymkata is good enough for me. That is pretty much it.
I love it.
To our listeners, if you want to kind of get in on the fun of this movie. So here's the deal. If you think that there's a movie that is unfairly maligned and deserves to be shown in a good light, or you think there's a movie that is beyond redemption and there's no way that we can go through it and find anything good about it, hit me up on Twitter, Not That Bad Cast. Let me know the movie, and we're going to watch it and we're going to find the good things in it. Thank you so much for this. Hope you go back and listen to this and all the other episodes of the show. And you can also find my other podcast with the interview with Mr. Agitator from VS for Villains at the MYAM podcast as well, available on all audio streaming services. And that one's also on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of It's Not That Bad. We'll catch you next time when the movie is probably not that bad. Take care. We'll see you there.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.